I don't think it's time to let up. The economy in Marvel Strike Force is still a problem, and pretending it isn't won't make it go away. Now, I know some people are tired of hearing about it, but I'm tired of watching the core resources that actually grow our rosters shrink month after month, all while we're told everything is fine. So today, we're not dealing in vibes, we're dealing in facts.
Hard, no cash to spend, free to play till the very end.
What's going on, everyone? Today we're diving into hard numbers, more than 12 months of them. We're going to look at the gold economy starting back in April 2024 when I first began tracking it daily. We'll also take a look at our training materials going all the way back to June 2024 again when I first started tracking that resource. Now, these two resources, gold and training materials, are the foundation of roster progression. Then we're going to take a look at where we are right now in December 2025. I also want to talk about a recent communication from Pathfinder on Reddit and address some comments made on stream by OG Diamond Dave. And finally, a look ahead to how I'm planning to adapt in 2026 if this path continues. So let's get into it. Now, before we go any further, I want to ground us in the build positively philosophy. Your game, your rules. This video isn't about telling you how to play. It's not saying everyone needs to chase the meta. But this video is aimed at the players who are trying to keep up in raids, in arena, in Crucible, and for their alliance. And if that's you, the economy matters. And that is who this video is for. Now let's start with gold. Back in 2024, gold income steadily increased throughout the year. From April through to December 2024, monthly gold totals climbed into the 300 million range. And that is what healthy progression looks like. Resource growth matching content demands. Now, early 2025 started strong as well. January, February and March all look fine on paper. But then something changes. From spring into summer, gold income begins tightening, and by fall 2025, the drop becomes impossible to ignore. October and November 2025 fall to the lowest gold totals in the entire dataset, roughly a 35 to 40% decline over just a few months. This isn't perception, this isn't negativity, this is math. And it's confirmed by a second independent free-to-play dataset from Rage Gaming, which shows the exact same trend. Now let's talk about the other half of progression, training materials. Back in 2024, our max character level was level 100, and it cost us roughly 23.4 million golds worth of training materials to fully level a character. And based on the data from July, August, September and December, we were earning enough training materials to fully level about 7 to 9 characters per month. And this is why progression felt manageable. Now, contrasting that with 2025, the max level increased to 105, the training material cost per character jumped to 33.2 million golds worth of training materials, and even in strong months like March, May, and June, we're only leveling about 8 to 9 characters. And by October and November 2025, that drops to 4 to 5 characters per month. That's over a 50% reduction in effective leveling power. And when both gold and training materials tighten at the same time, roster growth collapses. All right, so before we talk about the future, I think we need to ground ourselves in the present. And this is what the economy looks like right now in December 2025. Not hypothetically, not extrapolated from last year, but based on what's actually coming into my account free to play day by day. And let's start with training materials. Now, as always, I don't just track how many modules come in, I convert those modules into the gold cost required to actually use them, because unused training mats don't increase roster power. So far this month, my training material income converts to roughly 43.4 million golds worth of training materials, with an average daily value of just under 4 million gold per day. Now, if that daily average holds, we're looking at a projected total of around 122 million golds worth of training materials for the entire month of December. To translate that into actual progression, that's enough training materials to fully level about 3.6 characters to today's current standards. And we have to remember that is assuming zero waste and perfect efficiency. Now let's look at our raw gold income. And so far in December, I've earned just under 39.4 million gold, averaging at about 3.94 million gold per day. And if that average stayed exactly the same for the rest of the month, we'd land at a projected total of around 122 million gold for December, which is enough to level roughly 3 characters. Now, I do want to be fair and transparent here. We have not yet had a war season payout in December, and there will be 2 of those this month. And that matters because war payouts are significant one-day gold injections, which will raise our daily average. So this is not me saying this is the final number. This is me saying this is what the baseline looks out without any external spikes. And even with those spikes, the underlying pattern still matters. This isn't about panic. It's about preparation. Because if this baseline continues, even with occasional bumps, it tells us something important about how we need to be approaching the game's progression moving forward. And I'm still hopeful that this path doesn't continue. And that hope is partly based on the recent communication we had from community manager Pathfinder on Reddit. A player named Caboose5x5 posted about the command center feeling empty this month, especially for new and free-to-play players. They pointed out that earlier months had offered small, consistent XP rewards for just playing the game, which helped progression, particularly for new accounts. But this month, no general progression tasks. One tab tied to the race to Blue Marvel, another focused almost entirely on brand new characters at gear tier 20. And a final reward, a Master Diamond Orb that's effectively unusable for newer players. The core concern was simple. Is it really too much to ask for something for newer and free-to-play players to do? And Pathfinder responded by clarifying what was mentioned in the November 28th blog. He explained that Scopely is streamlining resource rewards in month 2, aka December, moving things like gold, gear shards and ISO 8 into new content which would be delivered in larger chunks instead of spread out tasks. That explanation matters because it tells us this month is meant to look different by design. And technically we are seeing that shift with the negative zone. On my first full clear, including first time rewards, my gold income jumped by about 4 million gold compared to previous days. And on repeat runs, the timed run, and then runs after that, the node rewards are going to roughly give around 2 million gold per completion. So if, and this is a big if, you can complete the negative zone daily, you're looking at about 2 million gold per day from that content. But here's the issue. A full negative zone run takes about 45 minutes to an hour to complete with strong RNG and a well-developed roster. For a lot of players, that's not optional content. It feels mandatory. Because right now, many players are living hand to mouth where gold is concerned. So this is where we're at. This isn't me saying the sky is falling. It's me saying this is the environment we're operating in right now. And if this pattern continues, even partially, then we're going to need to adjust how we play the game.
How much gold have the Krakens hoarded? Well, it just depends, Royalty. I haven't been hoarding gold. I just don't have anything to spend it on. So, you know, it's like not like I'm actively trying to hoard gold, you know? The OG account. Yeah, I've got 2 billion gold on that one. And, oh, gotcha. Yeah, we're super casual in War, Royalty. We're like very casual. Yeah, so.
So the first point I want to address is when Dave says he's not hoarding gold, he just doesn't have anything to spend it on. And that his OG account has around 2 billion gold. And from his perspective, that makes complete sense. If your roster is already fully leveled, if every rework is just an easy auto level, if you're already ahead of the curve, gold will naturally pile up. But that experience is not representative of the majority of the player base, even among spenders. Most players are not done. They're juggling new teams, reworks, level cap increases, raid requirements, crucible metals, and alliance expectations all at the same time. So when someone at the absolute end of the progression curve says, I have nothing to spend gold on, what that really tells us is not that gold is plentiful. It tells us that progression has ended for them. And that's the key distinction. Gold stops being a bottleneck only after you've already crossed the finishing line. For anyone else still running the race, gold is very much still a part of the problem.
They keep giving gold every week. Did you guys know that? Like every week, you will accumulate some amount of gold. Did you guys know that? But when you have nothing to spend it on a daily basis, you actually end up getting a lot more in a week or a month than you would spend. It's really eye-opening, to be perfectly honest with you. It's like, how are we getting so much gold? I think the game should stop giving gold out. That's what I think. I think the game should stop giving gold. This way, people would have to look to the web store or offers to get more gold, and they'd make more money. You know, I think they would actually net a little revenue if they did that. You know, like there should be resources that are website only. It would be nice. But
the next part of the stream is where the conversation really shifts, and this is the one that I think will land the hardest for a lot of players. Dave talks about how the game is giving out gold every week, how it just keeps accumulating, and then says something really important, that the game should actually stop giving gold away and move more of it to the web store so Scopely can make more money. And I want to be very clear here, I understand where this argument is coming from. From a fully maxed account perspective, gold is feeling meaningless. From a business first perspective, scarcity will drive spending. Those two ideas do make sense in isolation, but here's where that logic breaks down. And when you zoom out to the actual player base, gold isn't a luxury resource. It's not cosmetic, it's not optional. Gold is a foundational progression resource. If you remove it from the normal gameplay or push it primarily to the web store, you're not creating premium value. You're creating a paywall on basic participation. And that's the difference. This game doesn't survive on a handful of fully capped accounts. It survives on alliances full of players who are still building, still progressing, still chasing the meta, and those players need baseline access to gold just to stay relevant. When someone says everything is given away free to play now, that ignores what the data actually shows. What's happening isn't that players are getting more resources, it's that the cost of progression has gone up faster than the resources that support it. So taking gold away from gameplay wouldn't fix the economy, it would just accelerate burnout, shrink the middle of the player base, and make alliance-based content harder for everyone, including spenders. And that's why so many players have reacted strongly to this idea. Not because they want everything for free, because they want the game to remain playable without feeling like basic progression is being monetized out from under them. And this isn't theoretical. I want to share something real and with permission. I've been talking privately with Dinman, and if he's okay with it, I may show a screenshot of our DMs. But Dinman isn't a free-to-play player. He isn't a light spender. He was spending somewhere between £300 to £350 a week consistently. And that spending has now stopped completely. Not because he suddenly hates the game. Not because he got bored as such, even though he says that. But because the core economy no longer feels like it respects his time or his investment. When players, even high spenders, feel like progression is constrained in ways that money can't reasonably solve, the response isn't always to spend more. Sometimes the response is to disengage. And if I'm being honest, for someone like Dinman, the next step after disengaging financially is often disengaging entirely. Now, this is just one example, but it illustrates a much bigger point. An economy that frustrates free-to-play doesn't just hurt free-to-play. An economy that stalls progression doesn't just hurt mid-game players. It's gonna hurt everyone, including the people who were previously willing to spend heavily.
Yeah. No, I can see the numbers there, Royalty, but I only need about 120 million gold a month. Why are we getting 220? You know? Like, the game only has to give me about 120, 125 million gold a month, and I'm good. I don't need anything else. Everybody's already leveled. There's not a single character that comes out that isn't leveled, or single rework that comes out for me. Everything's already leveled, see? I got ahead of the curve. The next point I want to address is when Dave says he only needs around 120 to 125 million gold per month, and that because he's getting closer to 220 million, the game is actually giving too much. And I want to slow this down because this is where perspective really matters. If your roster is fully built, if every rework is just an auto level, if you're not chasing those older characters, and if you're ahead of the curve, then yes, 120 million gold a month might be enough. But that number only works if your account has already crossed the finish line. Let's add some context. In 2025, the cost to build a single character is higher than it has ever been. Level cap increased to level 105. Training material cost per character jumped by 42%. Gold costs scaling alongside levels and gears. More characters have either been reworked or came out in 2025. And content requirements are becoming much more tighter and restricted. For players trying to keep up with the meta and not max everything, just to stay relevant, 120 million gold barely covers maintenance. It doesn't cover catch-up. It doesn't cover reworks. And this is where survivorship bias comes in. When someone says, I only need this much, what they're really saying is, I don't need to build anything anymore. That experience cannot be scaled to free-to-play players, mid-game players, late-game players still building their roster, and even alliances with mixed progression, and most definitely newer players who are entering that end-game content. And this is why player-collected data like mine matters. Because when we track our gold month over month across different accounts, and we see that that income is going down at the same time costs are going up, that is the exact opposite of what a healthy progression economy looks like. And I want to be clear, players are not asking to level every character. They're asking to level the characters the game is actively telling them to build
at the point in the game where they currently are. They're asking to be able to participate in the content they're being pushed towards. That's not entitlement. That's engagement.
But no, it's preposterous, right? What's happened is that people want to go back and level older characters and chase other things and this, that, and the other. And they're like, oh, wow, all of a sudden, I don't have the gold to level enough characters. No kidding.
The next argument that came up is that players are struggling with gold because they're trying to level too much. Older characters, side projects, things they don't need, and then blaming the economy when they run out. And I want to address this carefully because there is a kernel of truth here, but it's being applied way too broadly. Yes, if a player tries to level every single character, every rework, every old team all at once, they're gonna hit a wall. That has always been true in Marvel Strike Force, but that is not what most players are doing, and it's certainly not what the game is encouraging. What players are trying to do is keep up with the content the game is actively pushing in front of them. New raid teams, new Cosmic Crucible metas, new legendary requirements, event-gated characters, and reworks tied to current content. These aren't optional side projects, they're progression gates. And when the game tells you build this team or fall behind, players aren't being entitled for trying to respond to that. The big problem here is that the rules have changed. The level cap has went up. They always do. Costs went up. They always do. More characters were released or reworked than in the previous year, which doesn't always happen. But the resources needed to support that level of progression have not scaled at the same rate. So when players are saying, I can't keep up, that's not because they suddenly became greedy. It's because the math is no longer working. Players aren't asking to level everything. They're asking to level enough. Enough to contribute to their alliance. Enough to participate in current content. And enough to feel like their time investment actually matters. And again, that's not entitlement. That's called engagement. And this is where my your game, your rules philosophy really matters. Because players should be able to choose what they invest in, depending on where they are in the game, without feeling punished for trying to keep up with the game's own direction. When the economy makes even focused progression feel impossible, that's not a player problem, that's a system problem.
If you had a store and your store sold water in the middle of the desert and people were super thirsty, would you give away water for free? And I understand this is not a popular opinion because that's life or death shit, right? Like that's a real life death thing, right? Like middle of the desert, no water, could die. Like that's a different topic, whether they should or shouldn't. But your capitalist business, right? Like this is totally not life or death. If people don't play this game, there's a trillion other things that they can do to satisfy the time. So like their whole purpose is to make money. I don't get how people don't get that. I don't understand it. I do not understand it. Like
now, the next point that came up was the analogy of selling water in the desert. The idea that Scopely is a capitalist business, scarcity will drive profit, and that players shouldn't expect essential resources to be given away. And I want to acknowledge something first. That analogy makes sense in the real world. But Marvel Strike Force isn't the real world. It's a live service game. And in a live service game, progression resources aren't your water. They're your oxygen. If players don't have enough oxygen, they don't buy more water. They leave. A desert merchant can sell water once. A live service game has to keep players breathing for years. And yes, scarcity can drive short-term spending. But excessive scarcity drives long-term disengagement. And the data we've gone over today shows that progression friction is increasing at the same time player sentiment is declining. That's not a healthy equilibrium. That's a warning sign. This isn't about free-to-play versus spenders. When progression slows too much, alliances struggle. We're already seeing this. Raids feel worse. Again, we're already seeing this. Crucible becomes frustrating and spend value decreases. Engagement drops. Even the whales don't want to be the only ones left playing the game. A healthy economy, I understand, doesn't give everything away. But it also doesn't punish players for engaging with the content it promotes. The most successful live service games understand this balance because retention is revenue. So when players are pushing back on the economy, they're not rejecting capitalism. They're pointing out that the current balance risks undermining the very ecosystem that makes the game profitable in the first place. Again, that's not entitlement. That's a concern for the long-term health of the game.
You want interest on your stat? Yeah, there, right? We should have interest. You know what I mean? I don't disagree with you on that, Beta. We should, right? 2.2 with 122k cores. Yeah, you should be getting insurance, you know? Yeah, I'm almost caught up to you there, Beta. I'm at like 1.9 right now, you know? Yeah, 1.92. My cores are real low, though. So I've been using cores to open characters, you know? Cheap to play here.
Now, the last part I want to touch on isn't really about numbers. It's about tone. There were jokes, screenshots of massive gold stashes, power core totals, mocking references to no gold, no G20 videos, and comments implying that free-to-play expectations are unrealistic because gold is something the game sells. And look, I understand that not every comment on a stream is meant to be taken seriously. Some of it is banter. But tone matters, especially when the topic is something the community is already frustrated about. For players who are struggling to keep up, free-to-play, light spenders, even many dolphins, seeing billion gold screenshots and jokes about interest doesn't feel informative. It feels dismissive. And again, once players feel dismissed, they stop engaging. Not just with the conversation, but with the game. There was also the idea that this is just a normal seesaw. Resources get tight, then they loosen, and players are overreacting. The problem is the data doesn't support that. What we're seeing isn't a short-term swing. This is a sustained multi-month decline in core progression resources, while costs are continuing to rise. This isn't a temporary dip. It's a structural issue. And when frustration is brushed off as noise, the risk isn't that players complain. The risk is that they stop caring. And when players stop caring, they stop spending either money or time, they stop showing up for their alliances, and eventually they stop logging in. And I want to be very clear as I close this out because I'm not here to fall out with Dave. He's someone I respect. He's someone who's been around this game for a very long time, and I do understand where his perspective is coming from. But I also need to say this. The concern I raised earlier about live service games doesn't come from theory. Live service games don't fail when players are angry. They fail when players go quiet. When frustration is brushed off as noise, the real risk isn't that players are complaining. The risk is that they actually stop caring. And when players stop caring, yes, they will stop spending. They will stop showing up for their alliances. Eventually, they stop logging in. That's not a hypothetical. That's what's happening right now with a number of top spenders in this game, as we know. Not because they can't spend, not because they don't like Marvel, but because they feel apathetic. They feel like their time isn't valued. They feel like their money isn't respected. And they feel like no matter what they do, it is never enough. And that is a dangerous place for any live service game to be in. And this is the most important part. To me, this is not the time for division. This is not the whales versus free to play or content creator versus content creator. This is a moment where the community needs to work together, because this can be made better for everyone. We can have a game where newer players, even those who spend, can keep up without feeling crushed. We can have a system where players can catch up on older content without falling behind the meta for months unless they spend obscene amounts of money. And we can also have a game where the players who are ahead of the curve, those who have already reached the end line, feel respected, heard, and valued. Those goals are not mutually exclusive. And yes, we live in a capitalist world. Money makes the world go round. And yes, people's real jobs are tied to the success of this game. But for most of us, this game is a hobby. It's a pastime. It's something we invest our time into because we enjoy it. And the healthiest live service games are the ones that respect both sides of that equation. What I'm pushing for here isn't free everything. It's balance, respect, and an economy that supports engagement instead of fighting it. Because that version of the game, that's achievable. And it's worth pushing for together. So next, I want to walk you through how I'm changing my farming and progression strategy heading into 2026. Not out of fear, but out of realism. And so heading into 2026, I want to do something constructive. And one of the most common comments I see on my videos is, you wouldn't be struggling if you just farmed the gold orb nodes. So instead of arguing about it, let's test it. Let's assume the economy doesn't meaningfully improve, and let's see what happens if we fully commit to farming gold orbs and training orb nodes every single day. Now, the first thing we need to talk about here is cost. And when I say cost, I don't mean money. I mean power cores, which are one of the most important currencies in the game. To farm one gold orb and one training orb per day, we need to spend roughly 1,200 campaign energy every day. That translates to around 250 to 300 power cores per day in refreshes. And realistically, that means you need to finish in the top 100 of your arena shard every day just to sustain this strategy. Now, if I can continue competing where I currently am, around the top 10, then I can do this and still bank between 250 to 300 power cores per day. That is a step down from where I am now, where I'm typically banking 350 to 400 power cores per day, but it's doable. And here's what the actual farming route looks like. Nexus hard, 1-9, 2-9, 3-9, 4-9, 5-9, and 6-9. All of those give you 400 either training orb fragments or gold orb fragments per node farmed. And then if we take a look at Heroes Hard, we have Heroes 7-6 giving us 400 gold orb fragments, and Heroes 4 or 5-6 with 400 gold fragments as well. We also have Heroes 7-6 and 6-6 giving us 400 training orbs, and Heroes 4-6, which also will give me 400 training orbs, but I'm only ever going to farm this if I need the featured character on it. And which Heroes Hard nodes I farm out of 4-6 or 5-6 will entirely also depend on whether I actually need the character on that node, because the cost and payout are exactly the same. So before we even open a single orb, let's take a look at what these nodes give us directly. Per full node farm on Nexus Hard, we're going to get 38,000 gold and 24 purple training materials. On Heroes Hard 7.6, Villains Hard 6.6 and 7.6, you're going to get 34,700 gold, 32 blue training materials, and 16 purple training materials. And Heroes Hard 4.6, 5.6, and Villains Hard 4.6, you're going to get 34,700 gold, the same as in the Heroes Hard campaigns, but you're going to get 10 blue training materials and 20 purple training materials. Now, across the 10 nodes we're farming daily, that gives us 366,800 gold per day before we open any orbs, and 212 purple training materials per day, and 106 blue training materials per day. Now, so far, this actually sounds pretty good. But now, let's add in the gold orb. And the estimated value of a gold orb is about 450,000 gold, but from my experience, that is a bit optimistic. So for this test, I'm using the minimum realistic value of 155,000 gold per orb. That will give us a minimum daily gold income of 521,800 gold. And at best case, that estimated value, 816,600 gold. Training orbs tell a slightly different story. Now, the estimated value of a training orb is 32 gold training modules, which equates to about 320,000 gold's worth of training a character. And in my experience, training orbs hit close to their EV far more often. But even at minimum value, you're still getting 24 gold training mats per orb, or about 240,000 gold's worth of training. And over a full month, here is what the strategy gives us. Our minimum gold gain would be 15.6 million gold. And our best case scenario, our estimated value, would be 24.5 million gold. Now, right now, I'm actually averaging about 5.5 million gold per month without farming the gold orb nodes. So yes, this strategy will increase my gold income by between 10 and 19 million per month. But here's the problem. It costs roughly 40 million gold to fully build a character. So even in a good month, this strategy doesn't give us a full extra character's worth of gold. At best, gold orb farming is contributing to 12% of the gold needed to build your 5 characters per month. Now that's not nothing, but it's not the solution people are making it out to be. Training materials are where this strategy is actually going to shine, because between the nodes and the training orb, we're looking at roughly 42 to 45 million gold's worth of training materials per month. That is nearly 25% of the training materials needed to build those 5 characters a month. So if the economy continues the way it is right now, this doesn't fix the problem, but it is going to help us to survive it. And that's what 2026 is going to be about for me. Testing, adapting, and being honest about what actually works. Not panicking, not doom posting, just preparation. And as always, keeping with the motto, it's your game, your rules. So that's where we're at. This video wasn't about panic. It wasn't about attacking creators. And it definitely wasn't about saying the game is doomed. It was about looking at the data, listening to the community, and being honest about what the current economy feels like, especially for those players who are trying to keep up with the meta. And I still believe this game can be better. I still believe there is a healthy middle ground. And I genuinely hope we don't stay on the path we're currently on. But if we do, then 2026 is going to be about adapting intelligently and not burning out. And that's what Build Positively has always been about. understanding your resources, making informed choices, and playing the game in a way that works for you. Now, if you want to keep this conversation going, or you're looking for a place to talk strategy, get my infographics, or even find a new alliance, I've got a Discord for that. The Jetson Squad Discord, which is linked in the description down below. It's a space for commanders at all stages of the game, free to play, light spenders, and veterans who want to approach the game thoughtfully and positively. And whether you're trying to survive the current economy or plan smarter for 2026, you're more than welcome here. Again, remember, your game, your rules. And if you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, share it with your alliance, and let me know in the comments how you're planning to approach 2026. Until next time, Geek Freaks, stay positive, and I'll see you guys in the next one.